It hasn't been easy, but that you learn how to just. I don't cry very often anymore, but I used to cry a lot.
What's good, guys? Welcome back to Raw Reflections with Steph. I'm Steph if you're new here. And if you're wondering what Crimetober is something that I came up with on this platform when it used to be called the Milk Carton Series. Now, the Milk Carton Series has not gone anywhere. She's still around. She's housed under Raw Reflections with Steph now. And you might have seen some of the titles called Raw Stories, but it will be under the Milk Carton Series playlist because we're never leaving her. But Crimetober is something that I came up with because I am not a Vlogmas kind of gal. I feel like I'm more of a spooky horror girl. Did y'all watch the new Conjuring? I liked it. Let me know what you thought about that movie. But I'm more of I love horror, okay? I love anything with horror, true crime. That's me. But I want to walk you guys through cases for 31 days, whether it's unsolved, not solved, murder mysteries, missing person cases, some cases that are centered around Halloween or just centered around the whole month of October. Now, to make this the most effective 31 days, because I'm trying my best, like I'm trying to hold myself accountable to give you guys these 31 episodes. A lot of these cases we're going to walk through together. I think that's the most fun part about it. So if you see me looking to this left, I'm looking at my notes because I always script anything that I write. But sometimes, not making excuses, but sometimes it can be a lot, okay, to memorize. And we're doing 31 days, might I add. I think the longest I did was 2 weeks. So let's see if we can get over the 2-week hump. So I'm excited. Let's walk through today's episode. Welcome to episode 1. Sorry for the long intro, but it's needed as we begin these 31 days. So we got 30 more days to go. Join the countdown. Okay, so today's episode focuses on an infamous case about a 15-year-old named Martha Moxley. You may have heard of her. You may have not. I, for instance, never heard of her. But this case happened on Halloween Eve, the day before Halloween, and it has ties to the Kennedy family. I said, hold on. What we talking about, boo? Hold on. So we're going to walk through the timeline of Martha. We're going to walk through what led up to the incident and all of the details surrounding the investigation. And of course, you know me, I'm still going to try my best to throw in, different audios that I find and pictures because I think that makes videos. I love that about anything I see. So let's get into it. We wasting time, y'all. As I said, Martha Moxley was a 15-year-old girl, right? She moved from California to Greenwich, Connecticut. And it had been stated that Martha was bubbly. She was very personal. Many people liked her. She was very friendly. She kind of grew up in a knit-type community where it was very elegant and rich, safeguarded, if you might add, community. It was kind of an area where people did not believe that crime would occur, And I think back in the early 70s that I won't say we, because I was not born in the 70s. I was born in 1990, honey. I think a lot of people did not take safety as serious as we do now. Meaning you might have lived in an area, or your parents lived in an area where they could leave their doors unlocked. Who doing that now in 2025? Absolutely not. So when you live in those type of gate communities, you feel a sense of relief, sense of security in your safety. Well, on October 30th, 1975, y'all, this night had been kind of deemed the mischief because it was a night where a lot of people would hang out with their neighbors and their friends, and they would enjoy the day before Halloween. And when I think about them naming it the Mischief Night, it had been called this because it's supposed to be harmless. Halloween is supposed to be fun, harmless fun. But you always get those few bunches that just have to be the odd man out and make things difficult. And even if it does not lead to, murder. It's just, there's always one. But unfortunately for 15-year-old Martha Moxley, her night of Halloween fun would end in a tragedy. Now let's talk about the night of the murder, the timeline. So that night, Martha was said to be hanging around the Shakeleys, which are supposed to be her neighbors, and they had not lived far from one another, which I will show you a picture that I did end up finding as I began to research more about Martha. Now, if the Shakeleys sounds a little bit familiar, it did not sound familiar to me, but as I read, it had been reported that they were related to the Kennedy family.
Those were cousins of the Kennedys. Tommy's Aunt Ethel Skakel had married Robert Kennedy in 1950. The Skakels were also one of the wealthiest families in the country.
Yeah, that's a famous family. They just had a lot more attitude about, they could do anything.
Around 9:30 p.m., it had been stated that Martha was on her way back to her house. But unfortunately for Martha, she never made it. And this is where the case takes a strange and twisted turn. When Martha's family woke up the next day and they did not see her in her bed, in the house, nowhere to be found, they began to search for Martha. Every parent's worst nightmare has come into fruition for the Moxleys. They would come outside to their backyard to see Martha dead by a tree in their yard. In their yard, y'all. She had been beaten so savagely that the golf cart, the golf club had been broken. Do you hear me? The golf club had been broken. So whoever did this had a lot of anger inside them. Because have you ever picked up one of them things? Them things are heavy, made of like heavy steel metal. And whoever did this took the staff, of the golf club to stab her. They beat her so savagely, like I said, that it was so violent. For what? So when the golf club was traced back to who this was owned by, it had to come back to the Shakeleys. Now, the father, Rushton Shakeley, had reported that the kids would typically leave these golf clubs around all the time. So anyone could have picked up this golf club and killed Martha. So as the investigation goes on, it had been reported that Thomas Shakeley was the last person to see Martha. So police put out this scene of Martha walking towards her driveway and someone coming up behind her, hitting her with the golf club, knocking her out, and then, savagely beating her and taking that broken part of that golf club shaft and stabbing her violently. And Tommy, was the last person to have seen her that night. Because why? Martha was at their family house. And not only was she beaten savagely, her body was dragged all the way to that tree in the back of her yard. It also had been reported that her pants and underwear were pulled down, but there was no signs of sexual assault. And they had estimated that her time of death was around 10 p.m. that night. So anywhere from that 9:30 when she was walking towards her home, as they say, that was the last time she was seen. And I'll show you guys the picture again of where they live. You'll be able to see. It does not look, as I'm looking at it from here, it does not look like it would take 30 minutes to walk, but I'm wondering, was he walking with her or was she walking by herself and he came and tried to attack her? And if I did not include, Tommy was 17 years old at the time. And in the diary of Martha that they did come across, it had been reported that she would write about her time with Tommy and Tommy's little brother, who was 15 around the time. His name is Michael. And she would write in her diary about how she would spend time with them. It had also been reported that both of the boys appeared to pursue Martha, but she did not seem interested in either one of them. That's what had been written in a lot of her journal entries. Now, I can't say that was been reported, but that's what they said from her journal entries. I think that is astounding. And so I'm going to read you guys one of the excerpts from her journal. So in passage from September 12, 1975, Martha reflects on an evening she spent with friends in the Shackles. Dear diary, today was nothing extra special at school. Peter was being his usual self. Me, Jackie, Michael, Tom, Hope, Maureen, and Andrea when driving in Tom's car. I drove a little then and I was practically sitting on Tom's lap because I was only staring. He kept putting his hand on my knee. I drove some more and Margie and I kept yelling out the sunroof, and then we went to Friendly's and Michael treated me and he got me a double, but I only wanted a single, so I threw the top scoop out the window. Then I was driving and Tom put his arm around me. He kept doing stuff like that. Jesus, if Peter was ever found out, I would be dead. I think Jackie really likes Michael, and I think maybe he likes her, maybe because he's drunk, but I don't know. And then on September 15th, 1975, Martha recalled hanging out in an RV on the Shackle property with Jackie and Michael. She wrote that Michael told her he doesn't like Jackie, but he leads her on so much, I can't believe it. And then a few days later, Martha journaled about a confrontation she had with Michael about her interactions with Tom. Michael was totally out of it that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. He kept telling me that I was leading Tom on when I don't like him, except as a friend. I said, well, how about you and Jackie? You keep telling me that you don't like her and you're all over her. He doesn't understand that he can be nice to her without hanging all over her. Michael jumps to conclusions. I can't be friends with Tom just because I talk to him. It doesn't mean I like him. I really have to stop going over there. And then it says a little more than a month after this entry, Martha was bludgeoned and stabbed to death with the golf club, which was traced back to a set owned by the Shackle family. And then according to Hartford Courant, the assailant attacked Martha so violently, the club, metal shaft was snapped. So it makes you think that this person had so much anger and rage built up inside of them that you would put two and two together and say, well, he mad because I really don't want to date him. He likes my friend, but I don't really like him like that. Sometimes that's how things really go. Like, people literally do get mad that you do not want them. You do not want anything to do with them. So early on, the suspicion had been on the two brothers, Tommy and Michael, right? Because that golf club, the shaft, whatever, had been theirs. It was theirs. Why would someone take their golf club? Even though the father had mentioned, they just throw them around. But why would it be specifically in Martha's backyard? That's not making sense to me. That's where my questions lie as I was reading. Like, that's not making sense to me, boo. But whatever. But for over 20 years, the case had went unsolved, right? And that's so unfortunate. And it wasn't until the 1990s that the case was revived. So a witness had came forward from a school that Michael had went to due to him being sent as a troubled teen, that he had confessed to murdering Martha. This witness came forward and said that he says that he was drunk that night and he, in fact, murdered Martha due to being drunk. 2000, a grand jury indicted Michael.
While Tommy was an early suspect, he had an alibi. Years went by. Martha's murder became a cold case. And then, in 2002...
And 27 years after the crime...
Mr. Skakel, do you have anything to say?
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel convicted in the murder of Martha Moxley.
Tommy's younger brother, Michael Skakel, was convicted for Martha's murder.
And then by 2002, he was convicted of murder of Martha Moxley and sentenced to 20 years to life. So this would not be the end. You would think, oh, he got 20 years to life. He's finally going to prison. No, ma'am. So in 2013, he had a new trial because they had stated that he was not properly represented. And so that conviction was overturned.
Prosecutors concluded that Michael was jealous of his brother Tommy's budding romance with Martha. But shortly after Michael was convicted, Robert Kennedy Jr. told us his cousin had nothing to do with the murder.
I know Michael Skakel, and I know he didn't commit the crime. The evidence is much stronger and suggesting that other people may have committed the crime.
Michael Skakel spent almost 12 years in prison until his conviction was overturned on appeal. And Kennedy says evidence pointing to the real killers can be found in Martha Moxley's own diary.
And through the back and forth of appeals, in 2018, the Connecticut Supreme Court officially vacated the conviction. And in 2020, prosecutors announced that they would not retry him. So legally, Michael Skakel is a free man. And Martha's case is once again unsolved. For nearly 50 years, this case has left a gut-wrenching feeling over the Greenwich community because Martha Moxley was just 15 years old when she was brutally attacked and murdered outside her house. She had her whole life ahead of her, just like any other teenager. And it was so unfortunate that someone decided to take her life all by a golf club. Many have wondered, did wealth and power overturn the truth of what actually happened to 15-year-old Martha Moxley due to the connections to the Kennedy family? Or was Michael actually an innocent man? I think we will probably not have those answers. And to this day, Michael does maintain his innocence. But what do you think? Who do you think murdered Martha Moxley? Now, of course, there's not a lot of key players in her murder. There had been reported that an individual that lived inside the home that would, I guess, help with school, etc., was looked at, but was never charged. But for me, it does not make sense. Someone had a lot of anger that they savagely, brutally unalived her. And as I begin to read different articles, the Moxley family does believe that Michael Skakel was the killer. They believe that he was the one to murder Martha. But that is the story of 15-year-old Martha Moxley, a bright, young, beautiful young girl that had so much potential, so much to live for, and was brutally taken out in this world by someone that she might have called a friend. And I don't think we will probably have all the answers. That's today's episode, guys. Don't forget, today's episode 1, and we'll be back here tomorrow for another case. So let's get into it. Bye, guys.